Tell me something, Sunil. You use the word competitive, and that's the nub of my question because incentives are for a certain period. But when these incentives start to get rolled back or faded away, do you think Indian companies will be able to compete globally without the crutch of that incentive? Because that's the fear, that the incentives help you build up, but once they are taken away, you're no longer globally competitive. Is that a fear?
So, if you look at manufacturing in India, we have certain unique advantages. We have a large pool of low-cost labor. We have the favorable government policies. We have a large domestic market, which helps us build that scale. But obviously, we all know that there are certain disability factors which are there, and those disability factors are in the form of high finance costs, high land acquisition costs, high power costs, and of course the high logistics costs because of the poor infrastructure. So I think what the scheme does is that it helps the Indian companies really overcome or mitigate the disability factors. And your point is absolutely right that the scheme is only there for for let's say 5 years. And I think that's the challenge in front of the industry, that we need to ensure that we are globally competitive in these 5 years and we don't depend on any of these subsidies or the schemes. And I think to do that, to become globally competitive, the Indian industry needs to invest in design-led manufacturing. The Indian industry needs to invest in a strong component ecosystem, as I mentioned. And also, of course, the industry needs to create world-class infrastructure, those factories which can compete, let's say, with our neighboring countries. But the good thing is that I think the industry is very conscious of this and really what needs to be done. And I think a lot of the companies are already working on it. At least I know we are definitely working on it very aggressively. And I'm very confident that we as a country and we as an industry and as a company, we will be globally competitive in the next 5 years without any sort of subsidies. And to tell you honestly, in some sectors, in some industries, and which I will tell you later, we are already competitive because we already have that scale and there's a high value addition in those sectors. So let's look at this example of LED lighting industry. And I think thanks to the aggregation model of the government of India, where the government was buying LED bulbs from manufacturers, we have a large scale of manufacturing already in the country. And I think this is one sector where there is also high value addition. Almost 70% of the components are manufactured locally. And I see that sectors like these are already competitive without any government subsidy in place.
I want to ask you about a sunrise sector because that's been a problematic area over the last year for many Indian companies which consume semiconductor chips. Auto industry, etc., have been hobbled because of issues to do with imports of semiconductors. But now it seems that the government is trying to create a semiconductor ecosystem out here. I mean, the PLI scheme on fabs is a good example. Do you think we have the capability of creating a successful, viable semiconductor system in India where we are not overly reliant on imports?
See, there were two things which were happening as far as the components and the semiconductor shortage is concerned. One, there wasn't enough capacity being created globally, because the demand really wasn't going up. Two, post the pandemic, we saw that the demand suddenly shot up for all devices. Post pandemic, we saw there's a huge demand for data and devices. So I think this has led to a huge shortage, as we know, of components and especially semiconductors. And I think it is absolutely amazing that India right now is trying to look at attracting investments into this sector. We've seen the policy which has come out for attracting large investments in the semiconductor space. The issue is, of course, that we are at a time where I think a lot of countries are looking at doing the same thing, which is attracting investments in this sector. So that way, it's definitely a little tougher to get these large companies to come in India. But looking at the policy that has come in, it is so attractive, and I feel that India would be one of the most attractive places to invest in right now. Because let's not forget, we also have one of the lowest corporate tax rates for manufacturing companies. So combine that with the incentive of PLI, combine that with the new semiconductor policy, also combine that with the state government incentives, and you would see that we have one of the most attractive packages as compared to any country in the world.